that's the brief discussion we had as we were walking in, that they're getting their logs right now in St. Regis from Wyoming. And there's a reason why they put that mill in St. Regis. So you wake up, you look out, you see a lot of trees. And I was struck at our meetings we had in Columbia Falls to hear that we're bringing in logs right now in Montana from Oregon, from Washington, and from Canada to keep our mills going, which I think ought to be very concerning as Montanans as we look at this incredible renewable resource in timber. So also, we've got some charts up here that highlight some of the top line numbers. As Alex mentioned, we've seen an 82% decline in timber harvest from 87 on federal lands. So that's we've been focused here of where I think we need some help. See what this means directly to jobs here, the various groups within the timber products industry, and then overall that bar chart in the back there just sees the closure of mills, what that means to jobs. I know when I was growing up in Montana, we had about 30 sawmills. Today, it's 11, I think, and somebody said it's even less than that now. But if somebody's got a better number that's actually lower than 11, let me know so I keep my facts straight. But my understanding is there's still 11 left from 30 in the past. I do truly believe as well it's going to take an effort where we have at the table here today. We've got representatives of the conservation community, from multiple use, from the timber industry. And John Tester and I met last week in Washington, and there was no staff in our meeting. John and I met privately. And with all due respect to our staff that are here, sometimes it's important that members meet privately and just have that conversation, building trust. And John and I agreed we've got to work on this together. And I'm pleased today. Deborah Franson, where are you at back there? Deborah, from Senator Tester's staff, thanks for being here today. And something I believe we need to do here in working this process together in it, because if we don't, what will happen is that there'll be one path here, there'll be one path there, and it might make for some nice press releases, it might make for some nice TV coverage, and some news stories, but it won't get the job done. And I hope we can take a pretty pragmatic approach here about how do we start restoring our timber industry here in Montana and get some of these jobs back is our goal. When we were in Columbia Falls, we had county commissioners from Lincoln County, Sanders County, and Mineral County talking about really the challenges and the demise of the timber industry there. And a comment was made, and many who've grown up in Montana remember in the old AA days, Bozeman, where I went to high school, was a AA school. Libby was a AA school. So was Columbia Falls and Anaconda. And somebody made the comment that they were called the Libby Loggers for a reason. Our own Mark Roscoe was a famous Libby logger, right? And somebody said they probably have to change the mascot now from the Libby Loggers to the Libby Lawyers, because the logging industry is gone, and that the lawyers have really taken over in the litigation that we're seeing anyway on a lot of these timber sales on national forests. It was one of the takeaways from Tuesday's meeting is I think there's some question was raised, not at that meeting, but outside of the group around, is the reason production is not at full capacity in Montana because the demand's not there. And it was pretty clear that there's plenty of demand right now. I grew up in the building business, and Dad's a contractor. He'll call me up and say, why are lumber prices so high again? So we know there's demand out there. It's an issue of supply of logs. But I've heard, and it seems like consistent, is the constraint. If we could get more logs, we could get more jobs here and more production. In fact, in that meeting we had 4 different timber outfits there. Tricon, Stoltz, Pyramid were there, and just going around that room saying, how many board feet could you produce if you had the logs? And we tallied it up, and we had not met ahead of time to try to pull them. It was 100 million board feet right there. They could start producing tomorrow if we get more logs. Which, to put that in perspective, that would about double what we produced last year, and that includes firewood in there too. I just want to open it up. I guess I think we've defined. There's probably pretty violent agreement about the problem, and of course the challenge now is going to be the solution to go forward. I think from the view that I have of legislative remedies and looking at passing something, I think we've got a window here probably in calendar year 2015. There's an old saying in Washington that every congressman wakes up looking at the mirror in the morning and sees a senator and every senator wakes up in the morning in the mirror and sees a president. The problem we've got is there's a lot of folks who will be thinking about running for a bigger office, and my point is that it's going to become more politically polarized, I think, as we turn the corner in 2016. It's just the reality we deal with in Washington. So I think there's probably a window here in calendar year 15 to try to get something done. I know there's been a lot of attempts. There's been a lot of hours spent here in collaborative meetings and so forth in the past. And John and I are looking to join forces here, working with Ryan as well, to try to figure out, is there a solution we can get forward here legislatively and get it through the House, through the Senate, and on the President's desk. Remember Schoolhouse Rock, I'm Just a Bill on Capitol Hill. Go back home and sing that again and remember how it actually works. You draw the flow chart around how you put a piece of legislation together, move it to the House. The House has its own dynamics. The Senate has its own dynamics. And the difference about the Senate is you got to get to 60 votes. There's 54 Republicans today. And that means you got to get Susan Collins and Ted Cruz on the same page of paper here, which is not always possible. But the point is we'll need at least 6 Democrats and probably 7, and hopefully a lot more that would join us into getting a bill through the Senate. And without a good, strong bipartisan vote in the Senate, we're not going to get a president that's going to sign it anyway. And then we're going to be here with a vetoed bill potentially. And that's the reality of where we're at today if we seek to put a solution through Washington reforms. On the budget side, I heard and Chad, you deal with this all the time, the uncertainty of wildfires and what that means to your budget. I think we've got a bipartisan support for this Wildfire Disaster Funding Act that Senator Crapo has. This could be a part of overall forest management reforms. It says, imagine if you woke up every morning and you were in the state of Louisiana and you were in charge of protecting the shoreline, and that entity had to also keep a kitty set aside for a hurricane. Think what that would do to managing the shoreline. You'd be spending a lot of time setting dollars aside the uncertainty. We have that same issue here in the West. So why don't we fund wildfires the same way that hurricanes and tornadoes are funded as natural disasters, and take that off the Forest Service budget and move it into a different bucket here, take that uncertainty away from Chad, and it seems like, can focus on forest management instead of uncertainty of wildfires. And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If we're not managing our forests, we have more wildfires, and the thing spins out of control, as we're seeing right now across the West. On the process side, I'm looking forward to work together on what is it on the NEPA side that needs to be reformed and so forth. And I know there's a lot of expertise here. We look forward to getting the specifics with the team. On litigation, we had hearings back in Washington when I was on the Resources Committee. I think the bottom line, to cut right to the chase, if we don't solve the litigation problem, we're not going to increase timber harvest on the public lands. It's about as simple as that, but it's also a complicated issue here to figure out, because unfortunately the people who are not coming to these meetings to be here today are the biggest problem right now on this litigation challenge we face. So we've got to go take a look at this and to figure out, and there's some good ideas out there that we can come together and say, let's go forward with the reforms on litigation. And lastly, in terms of making this thing quantifiable, I was 28 years in business before I took a job in Congress. It's one of the first jobs I've had. I'm not accountable for results anymore. I'm only accountable for activity. And I think we've got to get focused back on results. And so I think it is important. There's an old saying, certainly in business, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it. Well, we need to aim at something. And I think we need to put some targets down here. And I know there's some debate. Is it board feet? What's the right number? We got to figure out something here so we're on the same page of kind of the size of the bread box here, and that can translate right to jobs, as Todd said. 100 million board feet's 1,000 jobs. I don't think anybody's suggesting that we're ever going to go back to the 600 million plus board feet off a national forest. This just isn't the reality of I think the universe we live in today. But we know there's something a lot better than 100 million board feet, and there's probably something in this range here that would make a big difference right now for our timber industry. So look forward to working together on what those targets are, as well as by national forest. I think part of the reforms we're looking at are something comprehensive. All 10 national forests in Montana, as well as national forests across the West, if we're going to get a good, strong vote in the United States Senate. So I will be quiet now, just making summary comments, and we'll be doing some work here on legislatively. There'll be some hearings and thinking about something we get introduced in the Senate and the House sometime maybe in the late spring.